morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice Radio. So today, I want to look at the top 5 cards that I think we need back in the Pokemon trading card game. Cards that we lost a little while ago, that we haven't had since rotation, that I think the format would be healthier with. You see, over the last few months, we have experienced what the rotation looks like. We have seen what has happened to the format since the rotation has gone, and similarly, we've been able to see what's happened over in Japan, while they've still had the cards we've lost, but they've also had the new cards. This is not intended to be the best cards that we lost. It is the cards that we need in order to have a healthy format with the greatest number of decks viable. So in at number 5, I want Rescue Stretcher back. I really want Rescue Stretcher back, or really any item Pokemon recovery. At the moment, we've basically got 2 options for Pokemon recovery. We've got Brock's Grit, which on the one hand does function far better as recovery. It actually allows any 6 in combination of Pokemon and basic energy to be shuffled from your discard pile back into your deck. But on the other hand, it's a supporter. And I would be doing you a disservice if I said we didn't have any Pokemon recovery in the form of items. We have Lana's Fishing Rod. But it gets 1 Pokemon shuffled from your discard pile to your deck. And this is just all the worst parts of Rescue Stretcher. You're only getting 1 Pokemon back, which isn't very much. But it's going to your deck rather than your hand, so you've still got to try and find it. And as we're going to see in the not too distant future in this video, Pokemon search is one of the things for which we are really struggling at the moment. And cards like Rescue Stretcher do 2 things. Firstly, they allow you to play more techs. It means you can play something like Hooper, for instance, as a lovely little tech against Giratina, or to be honest, any deck which is really high on abilities, and if it gets KO'd, you can bring it back right away. But at the same time, you can also go ahead and play yourself a single copy of Marshadow, which is pretty good against Ultra Beasts and things like Naganadel, while also being pretty good for getting rid of stadiums. And by playing something like Rescue Stretcher, you can get them back when you need them. Even Lana's Fishing Rod, it'll get your one-off Pokemon back, but what it won't do is get it into your hand ready to use it now. But this is also one of the things that's really hurting non-GX decks. So to take a deck that I'm really fond of, how about Alolan Ninetales? Alolan Ninetales would play a 4/4 line of Alolan Ninetales and doesn't really want any other attackers, save the odd tech for the odd matchup. 0 energy, 10 damage for each Pokemon tool in your discard pile. The thing is, what you really want to do here is make your opponent knock out 6 Alolan Ninetales in order to win the game. Now, with a single Rescue Stretcher and a single Ditto Prism Star, you essentially have 6 Vulpix and 6 Ninetales. Essentially, Rescue Stretcher becomes 1 Vulpix, 2 Ninetales, Ditto becomes a Pseudo Vulpix, and oh look, 6 Ninetales, 6 Vulpix, you're off to go. Whereas Lana's Fishing Rod just doesn't do it well enough. We don't have good item Pokemon recovery, and what that means is that we're really helping big decks like tag team decks. Who needs to play more than 4 Pikachu and Zekrom, or more than 4 Mewtwo and Mew in a deck? A lot of these tag team decks don't even play 4 of the tag team. They give up 3 prizes each. You don't need to. But it hurts techs, and it hurts non-GX decks, especially evolving ones, where you need to get 6 copies of potentially a Stage 1 or Stage 2. We just don't have the Pokemon recovery at the moment, other than Brock's Grit, which is a supporter. In at number 4, Tapu Lele, or JIRACHI, or some way to get supporters reliably. You see, at the moment, we're in this weird situation where we just can't get the right supporters. With the exception of tag team supporters, we are actually fortunate to have Tag Call, but the problem is that's not all of them. What we really need to be able to do, well, by my definition, what I like of a good format is where multiple decks are viable and where you can set up. And what is great is where you can go, right, I need a completely new hand. I'll get Cynthia. Oh, it's turn 1 and I need to draw 4 or 5 cards, but I want to keep the cards I've got so we can play Lele. Oh, my opponent's got a large bench for the cards. I'm going to play Erica's Hospitality to draw a bunch of cards. Really get myself set up. I'm not talking so much about cards like Ace Roller. Ace Roller's a kind of card that lets you heal. The problem is, it's really, really advantageous to big tag team decks and far less advantageous to non-GX decks. So something like Ace Roller, I'm happy to see gone from the format. Whereas getting cards like Cynthia and Lele in the early game really, really do help out your non-GX decks as much as your GX decks. And then, of course, because it's Tapu, Lele or JIRACHI, there's a big downside here. Your opponent can use something like Great Catcher, which we do now have in the format, to gust a Pokemon up off the bench, take an easy KO, so there's a real risk-reward here. We're not just giving extra consistency, we're making it a risk-reward. You're still going to be better off, sometimes, playing extra supporters so you don't have to rely on Tapu Lele, but it gives you an out. If we've got good, reliable Pokemon search, and we don't so much, more on that in a moment, then we can use something like an Ultra Ball to go and get ourselves a Tapu Lele if we're desperate in the early game. One of the reasons why non-GX decks are so uncompetitive at the moment is that if you draw a bad opening hand, it's not looking great. Now, don't get me wrong, we've still got Dedenne, but the problem with Dedenne is it forces you to discard your hand and draw 6 cards. And in evolution decks, you might not want to get rid of your evolving Pokemon or your evolution Pokemon. You might not want to get rid of your rare candy. If you're playing a deck where all your Pokemon are basic, it is far less likely you're going to have an awkward discard with Dedenne. If you're playing an evolution deck, it is far more likely you're going to do an awkward discard with Dene. And oh yeah, remember how I just finished up telling you that we don't have great options for Pokemon recovery at the moment, which really does make Dedenne in a deck like Alolan Ninetales just super awkward. You can search out your Dedenne with Cherish Ball or Electromagnetic Radar, but I'm not playing either of those in an Alolan Ninetales deck, which incidentally, if you haven't guessed, is just going to be my go-to example of a non-GX deck this video. And even if I can play it, I might end up discarding my Alolan Ninetales before I've got a chance to evolve them, and then I don't have any good ways to recover them. See where we're going with this? Cards like Tapu, Lele and JIRACHI help every deck have more consistency in the early game. And I get that they do help you with stuff like Guzma and Ace Roller, which we might not want to be so easy to find, but you know what? We don't have those cards at the moment, and as a maybe slight spoiler here, we don't want those cards. I don't want them anyway. They're not on this list because they are cards which potentially tilt the format more towards your big smashy decks rather than your nice setup decks. In at number 3, Field Blower, or any good way to remove Pokemon tools. Now, we do have Faber at the moment, and Faber does actually put tools in the Lost Zone, but Faber is also a supporter. It's your only supporter for the turn, so you can't play a Cynthia looking for a Faber and then play it, because by the time you find Faber, it's too late to actually go ahead and play it. You've missed your opportunity. And the problem is we end up in a situation where there are certain tools which just lock decks out completely. So take something like Fairy Charm ability. Fairy Charm ability gives fairy Pokemon immunity to things like Mewtwo and Mew GXs that have abilities. The thing is, without a good way to get rid of it, we just end up with complete stalemates. Now, this is the one out of the 5 of the list we've got here, where I do think you could argue, well, that might actually do more harm than good. Because actually, it's blocking GXs. Maybe that's a good thing, but it's not just that. Something like Metal Frying Pan can stay on and just remove weakness from metal Pokemon. So if you want a non-GX fire deck, you're going to really, really struggle to do much against Lucario and Melmetal. Lucario and Melmetal's got a huge amount of HP. It's sitting up there with 260 HP. It's got no weakness. Even something like Arcanine, which is pretty gosh darn powerful, doing 190 damage, well, time they use their GX attack and Metal Frying Pan, you're doing 130 and you are just getting a 2-hit KO if they do nothing else to heal or prevent damage. The issue is there are too many tools that could potentially become broken with this. Something like EXP Share, which I know is rotated out, but something like that or Wishful Baton could become far too good as decks can just keep their energy. And although they're gone, I've given you a couple of examples of cards that haven't, and my point here very simply is that it means that some Pokemon tools could potentially be invincible and just way too good. I think a healthy format is one where we go, right, here's some good Pokemon tools, but we got Field Blower in the format, or something similar, Megaphone as it was. So it's up to you whether you're going to take the risk of playing them, and it's up to your opponent whether they're going to take the risk of playing something like Field Blower, bearing in mind they might not be able to find it at the right time, and it might end up just being a dead card in their deck in some matchups. In at number 2, Double Colorless Energy. You see, the thing is at the moment, we've got a lot of potentially really good non-GX Pokemon, and we just cannot get the energy on fast enough. Though I do have a request. Can we have Double Colorless Energy back, but it only works for non-GX Pokemon? Or is there going to be, when Sword and Shield come out, non-V Pokemon? Can we just have them for single prize Pokemon? In fact, to be honest with you, that's what I'd really like. Use them for single prize Pokemon, although if we're going to do that, we do need an out for Island Challenge Amulet, which will essentially turn a 2-prize Pokemon into a single prize Pokemon. Sure, there are some downsides to playing Double Colorless Energy or to bringing it back into the format. If we take something like the Family Charizard, this really shows what could go wrong. So the Family Charizard, 2 fire, 2 colorless, 300 damage. It's a stage 2, but it can be copied by Mewtwo and Mew. At which case Mewtwo and Mew can literally just use Welder and Double Colorless and use its attack in a single turn. Which is why I think we need some kind of appendix here to say that it cannot be used for more than 1 prize Pokemon. But there are so many good non-GX decks out there that are just really struggling. Something like the new Golurk. Something like Steelix. And I know they can use Triple Acceleration Energy, but they cannot be recovered because we have nothing like Special Charge at the moment, or at least not easily. And it falls off at the end of the turn, and it's fine. But there's going to be too many good basic non-GXs that just can't use this. Something like Onix. Really good Pokemon, really energy hungry, but a good tech against fighting weak decks. But it can't use Triple Acceleration Energy, and we don't have Double Colorless Energy at the moment. I do think we need to do something to stop it being abused by GXs, but one of the things that's really missing from the format at the moment is good, viable non-GX decks. And part of it comes down to Pokemon Search, and part of it comes down to Pokemon Recovery, and part of it comes down to the fact that they are better when they're single energy attackers, and at the moment, fine if they're an evolution Pokemon, great Triple Acceleration Energy, but there's just too many being excluded, not just now, but ones that will be printed in the future. But number 1, and I'm sure by now you've guessed because I've hinted at it pretty strongly in the video, Ultra Ball and Nest Ball. If you asked me to make it into one, Ultra Ball, but I do think we need a nice little pair here. We don't have cards that can just search out Pokemon. For non-GXs, we really are looking bad. We've got Pokemon Communication, but the problem is that swaps a Pokemon in your hand for one in your deck. What that means is, firstly, you've got to have a Pokemon in your hand that you're willing to part with, and secondly, you've now got one fewer card in your hand. You're swapping 2 cards in your hand for 1 card in your deck. It's not the same, ladies and gentlemen. It's really not the same. If you're a Psychic or Dragon Pokemon, great, you've got Mysterious Treasure. Outside of that, you're kind of lacking. One of the most egregious things for me of the entire format at the moment is we've got Cherish Ball, which with no downsides whatsoever is an item card that will just let you search for a GX. But we don't have something that will help you search for a non-GX, and that's bad. Now, we are getting Quick Ball, which will allow you to discard a card from your hand and search for a basic and put it in your hand. And we are getting Evolution Incense, which just lets you search for an evolution Pokemon and put it straight into your hand. And I am extremely happy that we are getting both of those cards. That really genuinely does make me happy. But by the same token, what if we're playing these evolution decks and we keep drawing evolution incense when we need Quick Ball? Or we keep drawing Quick Ball when we need evolution incense? One of the great things about the combination of Nest Ball and Ultra Ball was the simple fact that you were always able to go, you know what? I've got 8 cards that get my basics and 4 that get my evolution. At the moment, we just don't have good options. Non-GX decks are floundering around with stuff like Professor Elm's Lecture or Professor Oak's Setting, and then having to try and parlay that into Pokemon Communication. It's really awkward. And we've seen Pokemon Communication working, but it generally works when it is combined with stuff like Zeb Striker and Jirachi. And cards where you're going, right, I've got enough Pokemon draw here that I'm gonna have a Pokemon, so Pokemon Communication is going to work. This video is not to say anything bad about the format at the moment. I'm greatly enjoying the format at the moment. But the fact of the matter is, I'm looking through constantly looking through results of tournaments, and what I'm seeing over and over again is that this is a format which is absolutely dominated by GX decks. At the special event in Paris, 12 of the top 16 were GX-focused decks. At the International in Sao Paulo, 13 of the top 16 were GX-focused decks. Over the 2 tournaments, we're talking 7 out of 32 non-GX and 25 out of 32 GX. I'm not saying we need exact reprints, but these are the cards that I think we need to get back in the format, maybe with some changes to make them more focused to non-GXs, which is going to help to even the playing field quite a bit. The good news is we know we're getting some decent Pokemon search options. I'll let you decide whether they're better or not. But the other 4 really do leave us with a bit of a hole in the format, and non-GX decks really are struggling. But I'd like to know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me what you think of the list. Tell me what you'd take away. Tell me what you'd add. Give me your own top 5 list in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.